Anybody want to start with one that seems top of mind or particularly important in these times?
I would like to see us come together with the Governor's Office of Early Childhood, KBE, and CPE, and create a one, I guess, document, one guiding, I would say guiding principles of education in Kentucky, and truly commit to that continuum, all of us together.
This is Mike Bowling. I think I'm on this board, I believe, aren't I?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm not quite as good as you all are on the electronics, but the one area, and I agree with the Lieutenant Governor, that I would really love for us to take a look at going into, especially, this is a unique session that's coming up. I don't think I can ever recall us having a 1-year session coming up because of this COVID stuff that happened this last year. So we're actually going into the second half of the 2-year session. And for that reason, I would like for us to look at the possibility, not pushing or shoving or doing anything, but I'd like for us to look at the possibility of getting our legislators to consider additional funding in the education arena, especially for this 1-year session, that's coming up. And I don't think it would take a huge amount of money, but, having spent 30-something years around the legislature, I have learned kind of how to work the system a little bit. And I would be willing to apply my time and effort into that system, especially since my son currently serves in the legislature, and I've become friendly with not just the Democratic side, which obviously I've served as a Democrat in the legislature, but I've become very friendly with the Republican side. And I think you all know that just like you all were, I was reconfirmed to serve on the state education board, which, was kind of appealing to me because of the fact that I had served in the legislature, and some of our former legislative members did not get reappointed. So, I think this may be an opportunity to at least look into the possibility of getting some additional funding into K1 through 12, and even helping the graduate level courses, if that could be done. But at least K1 through 12, which we're responsible for, I think that this is a unique time that we need to possibly consider trying to do that. Now, whether we can or not is only going to be told between now and probably the middle of February or so, that when we start to see whether there's a possibility or not. But I think it's at least something worth pursuing, because I agree. I think strongly we are getting out of balance when it comes to various school districts and what they can provide and what they can't.
Okay. Hi, everybody. This is Karen. I'm facilitating here with you all. So I have that additional funding for K-12 education. Let's do a little bit of brainstorming. What other kinds of goals are the rest of you thinking about?
Karen, I'm thinking about this notion of support for all actors in the system to shore up their efforts and support their efforts to address issues of inclusion, anti-racism, and social justice. Educators need resources. They need samples. They need access to materials. They need ways of supporting this conversation both in the schools and in the communities. And when I say all actors, I'm including superintendents, school board members, and teachers supporting students to understand activism and citizenship and the responsibilities pertaining to that. I mean, we've got to address a dynamic in the culture here and now, in our society here and now. And I think some of us do look like the deer in the headlights. And the resources are there, so I think that this is something the department can do, collecting, supporting, facilitating, linking people up. I just feel like that is something that we can do, and it needs to be done right now.
All right, thank you. Another?
And I can add on to that, Sharon. We talked about implementing implicit bias training for every staff and every school employee. I'll say, just like you said, every actor. And I would like, I mean, we could potentially be the first state in the country to do that. And I think that is possible. And I think if that move is spearheaded by this board, that would send a message loud and clear about the expectations that we have. So I'm happy to work on that too.
This is Patrice. Yes, yes, yes. On implicit bias training. Yes, yes, yes. The other, thinking of our end time as October, the other present and frustrating issue that we're faced with right now is we have a new type of gap that we are going to have to address that we have never had to face before. We have a wider chasm in our student learning. So in some way, we need to find a way to support our teachers in driving some form of assessment, and that doesn't roll off my lips very easily, but some form of assessment to determine where our children are and how to best meet the needs within those gaps. I think this is probably one of our most critical issues right now.
Madam Chair.
So for clarification, are you still talking about the achievement gap between the groups of students? So Black versus white, English learners, et cetera?
It's going to go beyond that. Those with and those without, as far as technology issues go, as far as the assistance they've received from parents, I think it's going to be a more prominent gap across the board. We've lost some traction.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Madam Chair, I'd like for Lieutenant Governor, she made the first recommendation. Can you restate that for me, Lieutenant Governor?
I sure can. I said I would like to see us, all of the education partners in the executive branch, which would be the Governor's Office of Early Childhood, KBE, and the Council on Post-Secondary Education, and then of course the cabinet as a whole, to come together to, I don't exactly know how to give this, use my words on this one, but basically to come together to create a commitment to that continuum. I don't know if we could call it a resolution or a game plan. You and I might call it a game plan, Coach, for how we are truly going to commit to moving forward together throughout the education system. There is a way better way to say that, and I'm going to trust Lou to come up with that. But that's what I'll say right now.
Well, the words you used were the continuum and the transitions.
Yeah.
Which I thought captured it nicely.
And Sharon, by the way, and Lieutenant Governor, by the way, that's exactly how CARA was passed 30 years ago. We brought all the players to the party, got them all aboard, got business, big time business aboard. They pushed the newspapers to publish the good stories, and then we were able to get that passed. Plus, we sweetened the pot a little bit. We put up $600 million worth of bonds for roads. So if you wanted to get your road done, you needed to vote yes on the tax. And that's how it got done.
So Liana, we want you to
go ahead.
pitch in too, so feel free. Yes, Randy, we're gonna.
Yeah, I was just saying, into that, back to that, we want to create that P20 pipeline with support systems along the way is our particular goals. Every child reading on grade level, exiting that third grade, as we talked about. What is that transition from middle school to high school, and what's that transition from high school to post-secondary, so that the goal should be centered around the SMART goal should be centered around those transition points, then to allow those site-based councils to fill in those particular gaps, knowing what the access and opportunities are in their own local locales.
Okay.
You were going to say something, Soliana?
Yeah, I wanted to have more of I wanted to immerse myself more, and then I would have a more definitive answer to a goal. But I think one thing coming into this that I wanted to prioritize was just voice in general from all aspects of education, and that leads to the effectiveness of these gaps and the discussion of it, like social justice, like you said, and equity. So I truly believe that allowing that and providing resources for that will have a better effect for these discussions to happen, so that there could be a greater impact.
Thank you.
And those are excellent points. And I think, some of the things that, as opposed to reinventing the wheel, I think, as Mike talked about earlier, that when we started with CARA, there were a lot of parameters that we put around success to make for access and opportunity, like our family resource centers and different things. And even though we've kind of funded those a little bit better here lately, there's still a huge gap, and there's still lots of schools waiting for centers that were approved and didn't get. So I think, in our looking at our SMART goals, Karen, I think one of the things that we can do is go back and look at those outside community forces, those partnerships that Mike talked about there, and re-strengthen those, because I think that over the last 4 to 6 years, though, they've been slowly chipped away. Those tenets that were making CARA a very quality, holistic system were chipped away at. And I think if we don't have to reinvent, we need to go back and look at and re-strengthen.
Wow.
Madam Chair, I think our goal was to come up with some three or five goals. And
Yeah,
I think
so we're brainstorming right now, and then we'll go back and decide which 3 to 5 we want to focus on.
Right, and I don't know how many we have so far where we've been brainstorming, but I know I've got at least 5 of them here.
Mhm.
Well, Elvis, if you'll allow me, let me just ask, maybe this isn't a new one, but we really spent a bit of time on this whole system, the continuum, the transitions, and Randy brought in the role of the site-based councils. And so I'm just going to ask, what if we were to leverage the site-based councils to be more engaged and responsible parties to a broader accountability system, so that they own the goals for their schools, they own the metrics they use to determine if they're making progress or not, they own the responsibility for advocating for what they need in order to make progress, and we support them in that. We expect superintendents to report on what they are hearing from their local site-based councils, so that we get this whole accountability thing closer to the boots on the ground, the parents, the teachers, and the students in those schools. I mean, is that too crazy? I mean, these are the people with the best informed voice, the best informed view, but we don't hear from them in the accountability system. I'm just asking.
All right. Any other thoughts before we start trying to form a couple of these into SMART goals?
I think I would be remiss if I didn't bring up one of my passions, and that is early childhood. I think we've gone back over and over today saying that that is the first step to success for a future. So I think we're going to have to come out strong for early childhood initiatives. And again, I want to stress the developmentally appropriate side of that.
So I think we've got Aaron and Jason already working on a P20 or a KBE, CPE partnership on teacher education. I'd like to see us state a goal that we articulate an actionable partnership between the two agencies to improve the recruitment, the diversity, and the confidence that we have in our education workforce across the state.
Sharon, I like that. I like your thinking along those lines, because unless I'm totally mistaken with this, our goals will transfer also over into our basically putting our money where our mouth is on what we request for funding. So that's an easy way to transition over to the lack of professional development funding that is out there.
All right, we've only got about 22 minutes left. So, oh, Melody just said 12 minutes until the break. I thought we had until 2 o'clock.
I think that 2 o'clock time includes the break.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, we better get moving then. I guess I didn't listen, sorry. All right. Which one of these do you all want to start with? So I've heard about additional funding, support for all actors in the system around inclusion, anti-racism, injustice, assessment for where the gaps are, using the governor's office, KBE, CPE, and the cabinet to create commitment for the continuum of education, P through 20, the transition points, inclusion of all voices for social injustice and equity, utilization of partnerships came up a couple of times, leveraging school board councils, early childhood. All right, what's standing out to all of you? I've heard a lot around that partnership. Do you want to start with working on a goal for the partnership? How specific can we be here? What specifically do we want to accomplish when it comes to partnerships?
If we're going to prioritize, I got to go back to what Mike said. You know, most everything involves funding. And so I think Mike hit it on the head that we could probably create a partnership with the state legislature to the point where we can go and ask for some additional funding. I really think that would help us accomplish some of the other goals.
Alvin, thank you. I will. What I'll say is that I think if we could take the time to just go back and look at the original agreements that we had between the legislature and various groups. I forgot the big group, which was all the business people. And if we could just, you know, get them to buy back into starting this process over again with the idea that we're going to try to raise some additional funds to the legislature, then we would know who all to get aboard, because there were a lot of different groups aboard during that time. I can tell you there were almost every group in the state was aboard.
Okay. I'm struggling with where to go with this as far as specificity.
Well, I think you know, it's going to require that some of us contact the various groups as soon as we find out who they are and see what their interest is in joining back up with us on getting a new CARE Act or some new funding or another penny or just something, because that's what you know, that's what in the end, that's where it's going to come down to, where the rubber hits the road, is whether they're willing to come to the road and help deliver or not.
Could we just simply say, make it a little bit broader and say, build or rebuild, if you want to use the word rebuild, relationships throughout the education community in Kentucky?
Yes.
Because that includes the legislature, it includes the chamber, it includes all of those pieces, all of the education K groups. I think I heard somebody mention that earlier too. So I think rebuilding those critical relationships have to be done before we can make asks, because we got to build a coalition first.
You're right. You're right, Lieutenant Governor. And you know, Kara, you know, KBE played a big role in helping put that all together years ago. So, I mean, we're going to need folks like KBE. We're going to need folks, you know, like the State School Board Association. Those are the people that control a lot of the say and power out in the communities.
Okay, we've got 7 minutes left. Let's move on. So I think we got a decent one there. Rebuild critical partnerships throughout education in Kentucky. Is that right?
Yeah, the education community in Kentucky.
Communities, that's the word. I know I left out a word. Okay.
I would love for the early education aspect to be considered, because we're looking at measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. October with our deadline. We've already got some measurable tools for that, in that we've got the Breakout that is used across the Commonwealth for some of that measurement. I would like to see a focus on strengthening our early childhood, preschool, kindergarten.
And this is a second goal?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
By the way, Bernice, I just wanted to say that right now, as you know, there's a tremendous input from people, mothers, fathers, grandmas. They all want to see the early childhood funded. And, you know, maybe that's how we get into funding is we go after the early childhood and we don't come out just trying to raise money for education. We're trying to raise money to fund the early childhood thing because that's very popular, as you know.
Well, right now, we're in a situation where parents are like, heaven help us get these children into some form of school and get them what they need, because now more than ever, they see the challenges we're facing.
Yeah.
So Patrice, can you talk a little bit more about the specificity around this one so I can get this? So you want to strengthen K-3
support.
Are we talking like normally we do reading and writing? What's our focus?
I want it to be developmentally appropriate.
Okay.
When we start saying we want them to be involved in reading and we want them to be involved in writing and math, but we want it to be in a developmentally appropriate setting. They are not, 3-year-olds are not ready for somebody to sit down and teach them how to read a book. They need to experience a developmentally appropriate environment where they experience text and they experience the joy of reading and learning. So, and hands-on. So, to help develop that support for developing strong, developmentally appropriate early childhood programs. I mean, we should follow some of the guidelines of AEYC for that matter, and we don't. So just strong, developmentally appropriate early childhood settings. Does that help any at all?
No.
Y'all help me out here.
I would even go as far as to say universal pre-K.
Hallelujah.
I mean, yeah. Let's just go for it.
So, Lieutenant Governor, can you restate that for me? So I've got strengthen K-3 supports for strong developmentally appropriate early childhood settings. How do I fit in what you just said?
When you say early education as opposed to settings, I mean, do encompass it all, or try to have a word that encompasses all.
So early education instead of early childhood settings.
Yeah, just call it early childhood education. That's what most people refer to it. But yeah. We could, like I said, take it even broader and we obviously can't accomplish universal pre-K by next October, but we can certainly make that, you know, a part of a larger plan and take some steps towards it in the next next little bit.
So that could be the as measured by establishing steps toward universal pre-K.
Yeah. There you go.
Okay.
You should do this in a living.
Okay, let's come up with one more. We got 2 minutes.
I'm going to make a pitch for the teacher ed partnerships, for the partnerships between K-12 and higher education to generate a reliable pipeline for the education workforce in Kentucky based on really modern methods of development that are clinically based. And you can't do that without a strong partnership with a P-12 partner.
That's excellent. Yeah.
Sharon, could you repeat that? I was still working on my measured by.
Yeah. Oh, it's measured by strong.
Oh, no. Start from the beginning with yours.
Oh, okay.
Partnership between KBE and CPE
to develop P-12 districts and higher ed institution partnerships for developing the education workforce.
As was done in the, not this last budget, but the budget before, the legislature voted $100 million to go into workforce development. And that money was raised by local communities to $2.78 million. And the governor and the legislature recommended it again this last time, but the legislature would not go along with it. But I mean, we've got an example of this happening within the last 4 years.
Right, and we want to say that these programs have to be clinically based. That means they have to be embedded in actual, authentic practice.
Right.
So that our graduates, they complete as competent novice practitioners. Whether you want to be a principal or a teacher or a counselor, you can't learn this work. You can learn the content, but you can't learn how to do it unless you actually work with a master mentor who can do it well and orient you well. So we want really modern, strong teacher education programs that are clinically based. That means partnerships. And the department can help facilitate that working with CPE.
Yes.
All right. I'm not sure I've got this wordsmithed very well.
That's okay. We'll work on it. You could just say partnerships for strong educator preparation.
Okay. I like that.
There you go, Karen.
You got to make it easy for me.
I think I just heard Karen with a sigh of relief.
And I also want to put in there, we want to work with everybody to assure that we have access to support one another in improving our capacity to address issues of inclusion, anti-racism, and social justice.
Okay.
I
That's
still
4
wonder
goals.
if
I think those are 4 good goals. You all happy with that?
Well,
Did we
should
get
we?
the continuum in? I did the continuum, the early childhood, KDE, CPE. Did we
Yep,
get
got
that
that
in there? I got
Should we-
distracted, so
Should we talk about the gaps? Should we mention that?
you know what? I'm gonna join you in this, Patrice, in saying this COVID thing has introduced a whole different thing is this the time to move into individualized learning for every student in the state? Because here's what I'm thinking. We've got the technology. We probably don't have it everywhere that we need it. And we've got the knowledge about learning that what we're looking at now is group and individual student gaps produced by the various circumstances of the COVID pandemic. And we've got social emotional issues now that have to be addressed that will just get masked over with test scores. You're never going to get to that when every teacher knows those students, there are some students, if we haven't been able to engage at a personal level, they're not going to show up online. Or if they show up online, I don't want to get into that. That's another soapbox. But we got kids who are hurting across this state because they've been isolated. And they've missed the socialization and the social engagement that school provided, not to mention they've also missed meals. So, in some instances, even when we've tried. So I think we've got to kind of understand, we have a whole new inventory of student learning needs to document and understand.
Got it. All right, this won't be pretty, but I got our 5 goals down. I think I can get these reported out.
All right. Thank you,
All right,
Karen.
so
Make us
have a
look really
great-
smart, okay, Karen?
Yeah.
I'll do my best.